Hello everyone, I'm Peter. Welcome to our space for true stories. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. We will select the best comments to send to the original poster op of the real Reddit story. We hope your insights help them overcome their challenges. Thank you for being part of our community. Please sit back and enjoy today's story. AITAH for unintentionally getting a midwife fired. I'm in the military, and anyone who's been in my position knows it's hard to balance your personal life with service. My wife and I started trying for a baby about 2 years after we got married. It wasn't an easy road for us. We faced a lot of disappointments early on, wondering if it would ever happen. But after a few months of trying, she finally got pregnant with our first child. That moment was supposed to be one of the happiest in our lives, but it didn't last long before reality hit me in the face. I was being deployed for 6 months. 6 freaking months. 6 months where I would miss everything that matters in my wife's pregnancy. About 6 weeks after we found out she was pregnant, I left. It crushed me, but duty calls, right? So the only appointment I got to attend was the very first one, where we confirmed she was pregnant. Every other milestone, the ultrasounds, hearing our baby's heartbeat, everything I missed. It was gut-wrenching. I had to listen to my wife describe all these amazing moments over crackling phone lines, with me halfway across the world, trying to imagine it in my head. Early on, my wife decided to use a midwife to ensure she'd have a more personal birthing experience, and I was 100% behind that decision. She's the one giving birth. I wasn't about to argue with her on how she wanted to bring our child into the world. If she felt that a midwife would make her feel more secure and comfortable, then who was I to question that? The plan was simple. I'd be there with her in the delivery room, alongside one of our mothers. My mom lived an hour's drive from the base where I was stationed, while her mom had to fly in from 4 hours away. Ideally, her mom would make it in time, but we had a backup plan. If things moved too fast, my mom could step in. My wife loved my mom too, so there wasn't any tension about it. At least, not then. Fast forward to my return. My wife's nearing her due date, like 1 week away. Finally, something was going right. I'd actually be here when our baby was born. I was gonna be there for this. She had an OB/GYN appointment that I could actually attend this time, and I was so ready to be involved. But then, life throws another curveball. She goes into labor early, on the morning of that appointment, no less. We rush to the hospital, barely making it, and they confirm she's in active labor. I immediately call her mom, who thankfully books a flight that will get her here around noon. My mom shows up a few hours later, excited, ready, prepared to be there for her granddaughter's birth. We're all tense, but also thrilled at the same time. And then, she walks in. The midwife. From the very moment she stepped into the room, her energy was off. My wife, being the sweet person she is, tells the midwife that I've just returned from deployment. You'd think that would soften the woman a little bit, right? Nope. She relaxes a bit, sure, but she clearly isn't happy that I'm there. I could feel it, the tension was thick in the room. It was like she didn't think I deserved to be there. Now, look, I get that birthing is stressful. I've read the books, I've listened to my wife's fears, and I know labor can be one of the hardest things a woman can go through. I wasn't trying to make things worse. Quite the opposite. I was trying to help. My wife was in pain, and I know that laughter has always helped her cope with stressful situations, so I made some light jokes to distract her from the contractions. That's when the midwife's mask slipped completely. She glared at me, hard, like I'd committed some unforgivable crime, and said, "You need to get serious and show some respect for your wife, she's in pain." I couldn't believe the audacity. Who was she to lecture me? I wasn't being disrespectful. I was doing exactly what my wife asked me to do: make her laugh, keep her distracted. But I swallowed the anger building inside me because this wasn't about me. It was about my wife. So I let it go. I focused all my energy on supporting my wife, trying to ignore the growing tension between the midwife and me. As noon approached, my wife was nearly 9 centimeters dilated, and it was becoming clear that her mom might not make it in time. I didn't want to leave her side, but we decided that it would be better to call a taxi for her mom, so I wouldn't have to drive over an hour to the airport and risk missing the birth. When her mom arrived, I briefly left the labor and delivery floor to go downstairs and pay the taxi driver. I didn't want her to have to deal with that. She was already worried about her daughter, and paying for a cab was the last thing she should have to think about. Just as the cab pulled up, I got a frantic call from my mom, telling me that the OB and the midwife were there, and the baby was coming fast. I tossed some cash at the cab driver and sprinted back upstairs, hoping to make it in time for the birth of my first child. But when I got to the labor and delivery floor, everything came crashing down. My mom was waiting in the hallway because she had stepped out to take a phone call, knowing that she wasn't supposed to be in the room. I used the intercom system to ask to be let back in. And that's when I got the first shock. They wouldn't let me in. I asked why, only to be told that there was an order not to allow me or anyone else back in to see my wife. I was furious and confused, demanding an explanation. But all I got was the threat of security being called if I kept insisting. So there I was, standing in the hallway, helpless, as my wife gave birth to our child without me. 2 hours later, 2 goddamn hours, my wife finally called me, exhausted, and asked where I had been. I told her I had been in the waiting room the entire time, trying to get back in, but the staff wouldn't let me. She was confused, just as much as I was. We eventually found out why. The midwife had lied. She told the staff that my wife had reported me as abusive and didn't want me there. Can you even imagine how that felt? The woman I love had to give birth alone, without me or her own mother there to support her, because of some twisted lie this midwife concocted. I missed the birth of my daughter, something I can never get back, because this midwife thought she had the right to play God with our lives. And why? Why did she do it? Because she didn't like that I wasn't there for all the appointments during my wife's pregnancy. Never mind the fact that I was deployed, something my wife had already explained to her. This woman, this monster, decided that because I hadn't been there every step of the way, I didn't deserve to be there when my child was born. I was devastated, angry beyond words. I felt like I had been robbed of one of the most important moments in my life. But I wasn't going to let this go. With my wife's full support, we filed a formal complaint against the midwife. It wasn't easy. Some of our friends tried to guilt us, saying we were overreacting, that it was wrong to take away her livelihood. But how could I not report her? She took something from me that I will never, ever get back. And yes, she was fired. Rightfully so. But that's not where the story ends. I've taken it a step further. After some advice, I reached out to JAG Military Legal Services to meet with an attorney and discuss what legal steps we could take. And let me tell you, we're not just stopping at a complaint. This woman will be held accountable for what she did. There's a pending defamation case, and we're looking into having her license suspended. She didn't just cause me emotional distress. She endangered my wife and child by forcing my wife to give birth without the support system she needed. I don't care about money. If we win anything, it's going straight into a fund for our daughter or to charity. What I care about is making sure no one else has to go through what we did. This midwife has to answer for her actions. She took away a once-in-a-lifetime moment from me, something I will never forgive her for.